Good evening and welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council meeting of Tuesday the 10th of June 2025. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meeting via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public by following the link on Council's website. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image and comments recorded. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair. If technical difficulties are experienced with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved. If they can't be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. East Gippsland Shire Council acknowledges the Gunai Kurnai, Monero and Bidawal people as the traditional custodians of this land that encompasses East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional custodians have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years. Council values their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people living in East Gippsland, their elders past, present and future. Item 1.2 is apologies. And we do have an apology which was flagged at the last Council meeting from Councillor Arthur Allen for tonight's meeting. Now we move for declarations of conflict of interest. So councillors are reminded that the Local Government Act requires conflicts of interest to be disclosed in accordance with the procedures set out in the governance rules. This includes stating the following 3 points: the item for which you have a conflict, whether the conflict of interest is general or material, and an explanation of why the conflict exists. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for tonight's meeting? Councillor Ashworth.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I'd like to declare a conflict with item 5.3.1, leasing and licensing policy, which is a general conflict of interest, and this is due to my role as president of a local community not-for-profit organisation that the proposed policy will apply to.
Good, thank you for that, and when we reach that item I will remind you and allow you to leave the chamber. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. I also have a general conflict of interest in item 5.3.1, the leasing and licensing policy, as I'm the president of an organisation that has a current lease agreement with the East Gippsland Shire Council.
Thank you for that, and the same as with Councillor Ashworth, at the time we get to that item I will ask you to leave, and then when we're finished with the item we will get somebody to call you back into the chamber. Now, Ms Johnson, you also have a conflict of interest.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict of interest with item 5.2.1, a general conflict, and that's because I am related to one of the contractors in that particular item.
Good, thank you, and the same will apply. Thank you very much. So once we do reach the relevant items, and that will be at 2 times during the meeting, those who have declared conflicts will leave the chamber, and then will be asked, once the item is dealt with, to come back to the meeting. On point 4 is the confirmation of the minutes from the last meeting. So do I have a mover to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 20th of May 2025? Good. Thank you. We have Councillor Davis and Councillor Eastman. So, would you like to speak to this motion?
No, thanks, Mayor.
Okay then. All right. All those councillors who wished to vote on the minutes, all those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That is unanimous. Our next council meeting is scheduled to be held on Monday, the 23rd of June 2025 at the Corporate Centre here at 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, again commencing at 6 p.m. Now, at 1.6, we have requests for leave of absence. Ms Weigel, are there any requests for leave of absence?
Thank you, Mayor. I've received no requests for leaves of absence.
Thank you. So 1.7 is open forum, and we will now move on to open forum for our the item about petitions. Are there any petitions?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no petitions received to report on tonight.
Thank you for that. Now 1.7.2 is questions of council. So I'll now ask, are there any questions of council?
Thank you, Mayor. We have a number of questions of council this evening, some who are in the chamber and some who are to be read.
Good, thank you. So before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that when making your address, you show courtesy and respect to the council, its staff and the process we follow. We also ask that you take direction from the chair whenever requested. So during public questions or suspicions, there won't be any discussion or debate with attendees. However, councillors may ask questions, but only of clarification of the attendee. So, and as chair, I may need to stop a question or a submission if it's deemed inappropriate or not in line with council's governance rules or the Mutual Respect Charter. So each person addressing council is allocated a maximum of 5 minutes speaking time. There are a total of 4 public questions for tonight's meeting. One person has requested that the CEO present the question on their behalf. This question will be heard first, and then the individual community members present at the meeting will be called on to present their questions themselves. So, Ms Weigel, would you
Thank you,
please
Mayor.
read the question that's been...
The question is from Mr William Smith, and the preamble is, in 2008, I was required by an East Gippsland Shire engineer to locate my septic system closer to Bengworden Road than I had planned, as he said there was a 1 in 100 year chance that, after very heavy rain, water could flow over the septic system and potentially contaminate Ballantine Creek if it drained as far as that. I believe there is a greater than 1 in 100 year risk of any fire at any solar farm, leaving on-site toxic debris from burnt batteries, broken solar panels, fire retardant, etc. And the question is, how can Elgin be permitted to construct this facility, not near, but in the floodplain of the Ballantine Creek? And I would ask Chris Stevenson, General Manager of Place and Community, to respond. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, and through you, Mayor. Technical reports submitted with the application include a hydrology assessment, which models predicted flood levels and velocities in a 1 in 100 year flood event, as well as the mitigation measures proposed to manage flood impacts. The Minister will be required to assess this report and consider any advice from East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority before she reaches her determination on the proposal.
Thank you for that response. So I'll now move on and ask Mr Danny Bredenbach to come forward and ask his questions. Thank you, Danny.
That's working, okay.
Yeah.
The first question is, what pressure can the Shire apply to the state or federal government regarding the possible interference of the airport operations by the solar farm, bearing in mind the thermals that can come off the, the solar panels? And the second question, excuse me, the second question was relating to the use of the airport. The RAF roulettes are now using the airport for their touch and go training, as part of their touch and go training routines and exercises. The rumour has it that the airport will continue to be upgraded and enlarged to cater for more use by larger aircraft. Will the East Gippsland Shire Council use its resources to challenge the state government legally or by injunctions or whatever course you can use to ensure the solar farm with the 5-acre BESS does not get built at that location?
Thank you. So,
Over to me.
yeah, if you would respond to that,
Thank you.
please.
And thanks for the question. And through you, Mayor. So Council's submission to the Minister is the appropriate mechanism for raising matters of concern. The submission specifically includes a request for conditions of approval regarding minimisation of glint and glare from solar panels and mechanisms for ongoing monitoring of any risk associated with aviation, as well as an ongoing pilot feedback mechanisms to enable management of any latent risks. So that's my answer to the first question. In relation to the second question, Council is considering a draft submission to the Minister in accordance with the referral process as set out under the relevant legislation. And as the Minister has not yet made a decision on the proposal and therefore it's not Council is not proposing to undertake a legal challenge as no decision's been made at this stage.
Thank you. So now, sorry.
Just a question of clarification to Mr Stevenson. The questioner, sorry. No.
Cancel that. We also have Mrs Kay Neal, who wishes to ask a question of Council. She's here somewhere. There you are. Would you like to come forward?
I talked about the thermals, not about the glint of the solar panels.
Mayor, if I may, could I ask for a question of clarification, please?
Sure, we should have done this before.
Could you please resume your seat? Thank you, sir. Yeah. So I'm just seeking some information your question was in regards to thermal lift. So was your question about the impact on light aircraft, that the heat that could be variable of 3 degrees or more could have an impact on light aircraft if they have that thermal lift? Is that what you were concerned about?
Exactly. The solar farm of that size creates a heat island, and it's not the glint that we're concerned about. It's the thermal lift that you get on the small aircraft, which is your Ambulance Victoria and your RFDS aircraft, and those aircraft that are based there at the airport. They're not concerned about glint. We know that they've got tint on them that stop the glint, but there's nothing there to stop the thermals, particularly on that north-south runway.
Yeah, so your question, can you re-clarify your question so perhaps we may or may not have an answer to it? Are you asking, your question is what will be done about that, or will that be monitored? Or
is there any pushback to the state, for the Shire to go back to the state and say, hey, this thermal situation off these panels at the north end of that runway are going to potentially create an issue with aircraft that are using that runway?
Thank you.
All right, if you wouldn't mind, Mr Stevenson, if you could reply to that.
Thank you, and through you,
part of the
Mayor.
question.
Yeah, so I think to probably answer it more generally, we will be absolutely making the questions clear to the Minister of the concerns that have been raised around the impacts to aviation. And sorry if I didn't answer the question as up front, but they were some examples of the kind of questions that we'll ask, but also noting that the Minister will obviously be seeking technical reports from the likes of CASA and that as well. So we'll put those questions forward and hopefully get the appropriate answer.
Thank you.
So
Ms Weigel,
I could just add to that. Thank you, Mr Stevenson. So in the submission that you'll see that it will be tabled tonight, you will see that it's likely that there is a position put forward on thermals as well as glint and glare.
Thank you. Now, Ms Neal, would you like to come forward, please?
I don't have a copy of what I wrote.
Oh, I do.
I just wrote it and posted it. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead. Yes.
Some neighbours are just over the road from the proposed site, Elgin expects 100 employees will create industrial noise from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays and 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays for months, as earthworks are done and 116,000 solar panel frames are driven, etc. Once in operation, neighbours can expect noise 24/7, although Elgin's expert advice is that it will be acceptable, but they don't live there. Neighbours can also expect vibration, emission, smell and light spill, although Elgin will mitigate, manage and reduce them. These placating words can mean nothing. Then there's the ever-present worry of spontaneous fire. Contractors will plant a hedge 5 metres wide and about 1.5 kilometres long along 2 security fenced boundaries. Elgin's experts claim that it will screen the site in 5 years. Wishful thinking, in my opinion. What happens to distressed neighbours if these objectives are not met? Sell their now devalued property? Who would choose to live there? Compensation? Elgin claims its purpose is to deliver renewable energy projects that create a positive impact for both the communities it operates in and the broader public. What is the positive impact for neighbours? My question is, will you please support your ratepayers and residents? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Stevens. Well, first of all, councillors, are there any questions of clarification? I see none. Mr Stevenson, would you please answer the question?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. And through you, Mayor. So the Council's submission to the Minister outlines a range of issues identified by Council officers and also community members, which the Minister should address in the assessment of the proposal. The submission covers matters including detailed assessment of noise and other potential environment and amenity impacts to ensure that they are within acceptable limits. The submission also requests a balanced assessment of the proposal in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and the East Gippsland Planning Scheme. So the submission has been prepared to reflect matters of concern raised by local community members, such as we've just heard, and the broader interests of the community.
And thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Neal.
you.
Now, we do have some public submissions, of which Mr Neil Barraclough could now address council. And I might add there are more than just Neil, but the others are best placed to give their submissions at the beginning of the item, which is about the solar farms. So we could listen to your address, please.
Yes,
Neil?
thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for making this opportunity available. First, I'd like to congratulate the council for taking their stand opposing the emergency services levy, and I think we all appreciate that. And I would just like to add to that, there is a lot of land, in particular plantation land, that I don't think we know the rate status of. I've asked a number of questions and I've simply been told that I can't be provided with the information. Now, I've taken a very long interest in climate, and civilisations in the past have risen and fallen largely on solar activity. Solar activity goes up and down on a multi-century basis, and civilisations have usually risen on rising solar activity. They have trashed their land and they have crashed when the solar activity declined. Now, the period, last century was possibly the highest solar activity from somewhere from 1,000 years to 8,000 years, and our present civilisations have risen like none have risen before, and we're now facing significant solar decline. The solar activity is determined by the alignment of the planets, and in the coming 3 to 5 decades, we will have a similar alignment of planets to what occurred during the Little Ice Age. Now, we don't have a history of Australia during the Little Ice Age, but there are a number of clear indications of mega droughts. There's a billabong on the Murrumbidgee, 100-acre billabong lagoon, and it fills every time the Murrumbidgee floods to 23 feet. Now, if they don't get a flood to 23 feet for 10 years, it dries right out, and that's only happened twice since European settlement around the 1840s. It was dry for about 3 months in 1915, and it was dry for a few years from about 1945 to 1948, I think, from memory. I'm going from memory. The interesting thing about it is there's dead trees in the bottom of it, estimated to be 50-year-old. So at some period in the recent past, we've had a mega drought that we can't comprehend with our records, our time in Eastern Australia, like colonisation of Eastern Australia, and it most probably occurred during a period like the Little Ice Age. Now, we're now going into a similar period of planetary alignment and can expect a similar drought. And I'm going to run out of time, but I'll be as quick as I can. Two of the classic collapses of civilisations were the collapse of the Mayan civilisations and the Viking civilisations. Now, the Viking civilisations collapsed they rose during a period of very high solar activity, and it was warm, and they collapsed when the solar activity dropped off, and it became very cold. But a significant factor in their collapse was that about a third of the farming land had reverted to ownership of the church. The Mayan civilisations collapsed, had a minor collapse, I think, and a major collapse, and both occurred during periods of significantly low solar activity, and lake beds in the Mayan Empire. During these periods, they had reduced sedimentation and much finer sediments, indicating that they collapsed because of drought. Now, we have enough records of rainfall in southeastern Australia to see there's a clear inverse relationship between solar activity and rainfall, and there is enough to, I think, indicate that it is extremely likely.
That's 30
So
seconds.
it's extremely likely that we've had massive droughts during these periods of low solar activity. Now, we are seeing, we have massive areas of pine plantations in the East Gippsland and Wellington Shires, and I have asked what rates they're paying and what emergency services levy they're paying, and I'm not getting answers. So, and I'll conclude by saying pessimists get more pleasant surprises. So,
Thank you, Neil. Anybody, councillors, do you have questions or clarifications? No?
That was a lot, thank you.
No? Thanks for that, and most interesting. So,
You got a question?
for clarification. Okay, item 1.8, it's items for noting, and as I see it here, we have no items to be tabled for tonight's meeting. And item 2, which is notices of motion, and again there are none for tonight's meeting. Number 3, deferred business, there is no deferred business for tonight's meeting. And of course, number 4 is councillor delegate reports, and I encourage you to submit your reports to be included in the minutes of this meeting. Now, we come to item 5, which is officer reports, and this is the report on the endorsement of the Council's submission on the proposed renewable energy facility and the utility installation, Solar Farm 280 Bengworden Road. So before we have this report tabled by officers, I would ask firstly Ms Jackie Thorne, would you come forward and make your submission? And of course, like others, you will have 5 minutes of speaking time. So welcome.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors, for your time. Appreciate it. Right from when we first learned of this project, we've always said that the site was inappropriate. It's undulating, it's not flat. It's on the Ballantine Creek, it's a known floodway and part of the Gippsland Lakes catchment. It's too close to homes. There's 21 homes within a kilometre of the site, one within 50 metres. If you go out to the 2 kilometre radius, that's 43 homes. That's a lot of homes and people. It's too close to the airport, risking our medical transport access. And it's too close to populated areas like Bairnsdale, Eagle Point and Paynesville. The fire risk is too high and our emergency services are already stretched. Now we've had the opportunity to read the reports put together by the proponents, we have more concerns. Some of our key concerns, like fire and the catchment issues, those reports were desktop reports from New South Wales. It ticks the boxes, the reports are done, but it speaks to the respect that those issues have been given and the level of scrutiny. No doubt the fire report will comply with the CFA Renewable guidelines, but they pay no attention to the physical site or its water requirement for a multi-day fire event. We've had a number of site inspections with relevant authorities coming along, East Gippsland Catchment Management Authority, East Gippsland Climate Action Group. We've had a senior member from the Bairnsdale CFA. They've all said the site's not appropriate. Site's located well outside the Gippsland Renewable Energy Zone. The high priority zone's in the Latrobe Valley, where the infrastructure is already in place, ready to go, and where the Fire Rescue Victoria support is based. Traralgon is our closest Fire Rescue Victoria base, and they would be the people who would be called on in a fire event. It's 2 hours away, realistically. It's too far. Being located on a waterway within 8 kilometres of the Gippsland Lakes Ramsar site, that should be a trigger for an environmental effect statement. The proponents have self-assessed and they've decided they don't need one. There's no plan to contain the vast amount of contaminated water from a multi-day fire, which is a direct threat to our catchment's water, soil and groundwater. Community is not able to ask for an environmental effect statement, but Council, as a referral body, can, and we strongly request that Council ask for an EES to be completed. I just wanted to take 1 minute to speak on mental health and the high stress load from carrying this project. It's high. There is so much frustration and it takes so much time. It feels like every conversation we have is about solar farms. There is no social escape because it's there too. Everyone wants to know what's happening when you see them, even though you want to escape from it. There's no escape with sleep because getting to or staying asleep seems to be impossible now. It's a marathon of unknown length that none of us trained for or were warned about, and no one really wants to be in it. There are a number of us in our community who have sought professional help to get through this, and the rest of us probably should have. It's so hard getting people to listen, to get an audience with the right people, to get an audience with media, to get the right doors to open. We're continually told to trust the process, but we keep getting fobbed off. Who is a relevant authority? EPA tells us to talk to catchment management. Catchment management tells us to talk to EPA. EPA say they can't do anything until the site is operational and there's an issue. Catchment management says that's not right, and we keep doing this dance where we feel like we're just not being heard, we're not being listened to and not being respected. It's really hard to trust the process when there doesn't even seem to be a process. And I think that probably comes to my time limit. I'd like to hand over to Sue Caithness to talk on fire issues now, please. I think she's dialing in remotely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for that, Jackie.
Then, question of clarification.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Jackie, I just have a question of clarification, sorry. You mentioned that the council had the right to ask for an AES. Have you spoken to anyone about that? Is that I'm not familiar with that.
I haven't spoken to anyone particularly other than in the council briefing last week. I did speak to the environmental effect statement in that. It's not something the community is allowed to ask for. We're not a referral body, but the council can ask for one.
Have you requested anyone do that though?
Not formally, probably, no.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, that can be done. Thank you.
Any other questions, clarification? Thank you.
Thank you.
We got Sue on the line? Good. Hello, Sue.
Hello. Sorry, I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you. So if you would like to give your presentation, please.
Okay. I came to the offices last Tuesday and did a presentation to you on my concerns around the Ballantine Solar Farm and around the firefighting capability for that particular farm or solar farm. I just wanted to quickly go over my main concerns, and that's around water storage, water availability, and also runoff in the instance of there being an actual fire in the BESS. So now I think looking at the table there, most of you were available for that presentation that we did last Tuesday. So I guess in addition to that presentation that I did, I have since spoken to CFA, to the head of District 11 or acting ACFO, Aaron Worcester, District 11, and explained to him my concerns. Now, when I went through around volume of water, firefighting capability, availability of additional water, and then also the ability to be able to retain the runoff, he said that a month ago CFA had actually had a meeting in relation to the Ballantine Solar Farm, and none of these issues were actually brought up in that. So he has since put me in contact with the risk compliance department for CFA. Now, I was hoping to speak to them today before the meeting tonight, but I haven't been able to speak to them today. So definitely around firefighting water capacity. So on site at the farm, they're saying 621,000 litres, and based on using the Bairnsdale pumper, the Mount Taylor pumper tanker, and the Lakes entrance pumper, that water supply would be gone within an hour. Now, the Geelong fire, they were fighting that fire for 4 days. Not fighting the fire, so they let the BESS burn out. So they don't actually fight BESS fires. You can't, you've just got to let them burn out. So, but it was the water required for cooling the surrounding units. And they had to make up a makeshift reservoir for the runoff for that water, and they pumped out 900,000 litres after the fact. So that's 300,000 litres straight up we're short, just based on that fire that occurred in Geelong. And then also that wasn't all the water. So that reservoir was put in place 12 hours after the fact, when the majority of the firefighting component had been basically undertaken. So there would have been a lot more water runoff. And when I raised that with Aaron, he said that normally they allow for 130%, but that's even more than 130%. So there are some pretty serious concerns around capability. When I spoke to Aaron as well, the ladder platform was not in station at Traralgon, and that would be our nearest aerial appliance. So he was going to look into that because he couldn't understand why the ladder platform was not there, because normally they'll bring equipment from Melbourne to cover if there's a breakdown. But so I haven't spoken to Aaron in relation to that. But certainly there are some pretty serious concerns around what the capabilities would be if there was to be a fire in this location, and in particular the access. So even though it's on the corner of Bengworden Road and Hines Road, to have pumpers passing each other on Hines Road, it's a one-way access. You cannot have trucks passing each other. They can only pass each other on Bengworden Road, and Bengworden Road would pretty much be blocked if there was to be an incident like that. And there's only two other water points there, at the airport and at the corner of Bengworden Road and Humphreys Road, both on the same line, and both would not have enough water capacity to be able to meet the requirements of this, if there was to be an incident like this. So so that's just in addition to what I presented to you last Tuesday. Happy to, and I'll continue to push this along the compliance side of things with CFA.
Thank you. So, councillors, any questions of clarification re the firefighting capability? No, I see none. Sorry, we do have a latecomer. Councillor Buckley.
Look, my question is around my lack of understanding of the advancement of technology with the cooling capacity for the battery setups that perhaps have advanced since the Geelong fires, and whether that would make a difference. And perhaps you don't have understanding of that, and neither do I. So I'm more curious about the advancements, I suppose, and if that would make a difference.
So they're saying that there is a irrigation system, but that would be also working off of the water supply that would be on site. So I'm not 100% sure myself, but they're only saying that so of the 621,000 litres on site, the 579 is allocated to the BESS. So that would be what we would be drawing from, as well as it having a deluge system to try and cool in the meantime as well. So look, yeah, I think that probably there has been a lot of takeaways from that fire in Geelong, but there's been lots of work done since the initial fires with BESS, but they are still occurring. So, look, as I said to you in the original meeting, it's not that I'm against solar farms. I just think that the location of this solar farm is just not a good location given firefighting capability and location and water and all of those types of things. So.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Thank you.
And thanks for your presentation.
Excuse me.
Oh, we have another one. We have one from Councillor Eastman. Sorry about that, I didn't see you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm actually burning my dinner. Just a minute.
Call a firefighter.
Sorry, I didn't know how long you were going to be. So sorry. That's really bad.
What were your firefighting capabilities?
I'm in Leasing in New South Wales. I do apologise, and I wasn't sure how long it was going to take, so I started cooking my dinner. Sorry about that.
You're right, Sue. Hope you're all right now. So I just have a question of clarification about, you said you spoke to the CFA head of District 11, explained your concerns. And you mentioned something that they had a meeting about the farm, but that none of the issues were brought up that you brought up. Can you explain a bit, when they say they had a meeting, was that a meeting with community, a meeting with Elgin, or what sort of meeting was it?
I don't know who was in the meeting. I know that Aaron from District 11 attended the meeting, and it was all of the people from Risk and Compliance with CFA that were going through basically the Elgin report, is my understanding from speaking to Aaron. But when I raised the issues with him, he said they were looking at it from a CFA perspective, not from a region perspective. So they weren't looking at it as per the location and water availability. They were basically going off of the report from Elgin. So that's why Aaron has referred me through to the Risk and Compliance team to have a chat with them about it, to make sure that they're aware of all of the issues. Now, they did say that they can't oppose it. All they can do is put added requirements on Elgin to make sure it meets standards or meets additional requirements if CFA decide there are some. And I said, isn't that sort of like a bit of the chicken and the egg theory that, you know, okay, let's approve this, but then we can't meet requirements after the fact to then be able to make sure that it meets all the safety side of things. So, and firefighting capability. So Aaron, that's why Aaron forwarded me on to the Risk and Compliance team. Now, that was late on Friday, and I had hoped, so Aaron said that Matt from Risk and Compliance should give me a call back today, but unfortunately I think the long weekend's probably done me a bit of a mischief there, and he hasn't managed to phone me so that I can have this discussion with him. So then, more than happy to follow up and send through any information after the fact if need be.
Thank you.
We also have another question of clarification from Councillor Farquhar.
Just one clarification, the ESS, is that what you were after, Jackie? Yes. That's okay, there is one inside the report there.
No, that is not. They've not done one.
Sorry? I can't hear you very well.
Sorry, sir.
It's probably a question for the officer.
Yeah,
question for the officer?
Yeah, this one wouldn't be for Sue then.
No.
Okay.
No, thank you very much, Sue. And just you may have to scrape your tea a little bit to get the charcoal off it, but have a good evening.
It's all good. It doesn't matter, I've got a salad there I can have instead. So, okay, thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay, now I will ask Mr. Mark Norling if he would like to come forward with his submission.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the councillors and council for letting me talk tonight on behalf of the community, myself and the community, regarding this solar farm. Firstly, I want to make it clear that the renewable energy industry is inevitable for East Gippsland, and I know there's going to be projects happen throughout this region, whether it's solar, wind, sand or forestry. There's going to be things happen because the government's pushing them ahead. The biggest issue with this site is its location and the factors what are affecting the location. I had a meeting with my wife, with Shane from Elgin Energy. We had a talk about the site. He said it wasn't the most ideal site, but it was the only site they'd been given, and he was trying to put a square peg in a round hole. That told me there's an issue with that location. So and I believe it's all about money for this site and trying to meet the targets for the government. So they're the issues that I've got with that site and location regarding what Elgin are doing. More to the point is the reports, and Jackie was right what they said, the reports are all over the place, and a good example of this is the agriculture report, and I read this out the other day,
Ag Challenge Consulting is an agricultural consulting company servicing the dairy, beef and potato industries within high rainfall and irrigation agriculture industries in southern and northern Victoria. Now, I'm not the smartest bloke in this room, but we're in East Gippsland, not northern and southern Victoria. How can they be experts and do an agriculture report within this area when they're not qualified to do it? Now, this report is probably not even worth the paper it's written on in my book, but it reads well, it's full of guff and full of jargon. One of the other things with the report, they talk about the DSE and carrying capacities of this area and this location. All they do is talk the report down. And I was talking to another gentleman, I won't say his name, and we were talking about the DSE rates, and he told me their farm runs on a 20 DSE, and the Ag Challenge are talking 5 DSE to 6 DSE for this area. So we've got to remember Ag Challenge are being paid by Elgin Energy to write the report to make these projects, make this land and this land type look not suitable for agriculture activities or high productive agriculture activities. Our farmers next door, it states that the property next door to where the solar farm's going to go is low impact and not very good for farming. We're running a fairly successful crossbred ewe and lamb operation, running 2 ewes and lambs to the acre. They're stating they run 2 ewes and lambs to the hectare on this property next door. I can't understand why the rates are so different. So that's to do with the agriculture report. As I say, they're full of jargon and they're full of stuff that all they're trying to do is confuse the people. But I believe that we need to be able to get a new agriculture report and someone who can talk about the district and the region of what's happening throughout East Gippsland. We then go on to the hydrology report and the flooding and the floodways through this location. And we know that it's going to be built on a floodway. They want to put man-made drains through that area and they want to change the course of the floodway. I don't know anyone else through this region who will be given the opportunity to do that and even think they should be able to do that. If they change the floodway and put the chain mesh fences up like they're proposing to put up, all it's going to do is back onto the neighbour's property, change the course of the drainage system and the way that the waterways is going to run, and which will cause more problems to the area. And then the water will back up onto the chain mesh fence, and that damage will it'll push the chain mesh fence over, it could do whatever damage you want. So I think that there is a lot of things on these reports that need to be really looked into, and more things take place to make them the site suitable, or find another site to put a solar farm. The other issue that is worrying me immensely being a farmer is the animal welfare issue. We've talked about best fires, we've talked about everything else, but when a best fire comes, it puts toxic fumes across the waterway, the land, and we can't move 2,000 ewes and lambs. And the after effect on that, I don't know what's going to happen. We've spoke to the RSPCA, they put me on to the government vets. The government vets have then put me back to the RSPCA, and all we do is going around and round in circles. So all we're getting is the run around, which we've all been talking about today. So I'm probably run out of time. Thank you very much. And I probably haven't been that clear, but I've tried to do my best to get it across to you.
Thanks for that, Mark. So we have a question from Councillor Eastman, or a clarification?
Clarification, thanks. You said that Elgin said, when you met with them, that it's not the most ideal site, but the only one they've been given. I don't understand. They've been given...
Well, that was the only site they'd been offered in this area.
By farmers?
By a farmer.
Right.
Because I said, why are you there? And they said, we were offered the site.
Okay.
They didn't actively go out and seek the site, they were offered that site.
Oh, so... Okay, so it was put forward by someone who owned that?
Put forward by Alan Stewart. Yeah.
Right, okay. And they hadn't looked at any other sites in the area?
I don't know. Didn't say that. He said that was the only site that had been put forward to them.
Thank you.
Because they sent letters around to us. Oh, we got a letter, didn't we? Yeah, we got letters, and they were asking for people to show interest in putting solar farms on. And I got the letter and I just put it in the bin because I wasn't interested in it, of course, but yeah. So,
Okay, I understand.
That's how it happened, yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the process, sorry. So they sent letters out?
They sent letters out asking people who were interested in putting solar farms on their property.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thanks, and through you, Mayor. Have Elgin Energy shown any interest in working with the neighbouring landholders, Mark, at all?
In what regard, Councillor Davis?
You know, to minimise impacts to your daily lifestyle, your operations?
No, they haven't. Every time we've put something forward to them, they've gone around and changed it and to make it look like they've fixed an issue. So we've said, you know, there's a problem. They've gone and fixed the problem, put it in their community, their letters they sent out, and they've fixed that problem. A good example was the migration of the silver eels. They go through our property. Now, we put that forward. They come back out and said the silver eels aren't endangered species. I know they're not endangered species. We know that. But they addressed the issue by saying something to us, but they didn't address the issue that they migrate down through the Gippsland lakes, they go to Tahiti, the parents die, the offspring comes back up to the same waterways. Now that's been happening for however long, I don't know. Now those eels don't go to another waterway, they go to the same one. They didn't address that issue, they just said they weren't an endangered species. Now they didn't even address the issue. So they come back and try and change things to suit themselves to make it fit. And I've got to the stage where I don't tell them much, because every time you tell them something, they try and swing it around in their advantage against us, not trying to help us resolve an issue. And the issue is it's probably the wrong location, but that's not about that to them. They've got to get these projects through for the government.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Councillors, any other questions of clarification? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your submission. Now, I'll ask Mr. Rory Lawrence to come forward and make his submission, and same as everybody else, there is 5 minutes of speaking time, and at 30 seconds remaining there will be a bell go off to alert you. So
Thank
welcome.
You, good evening, councillors and staff. I'm joined by Callum Goldby from Urbis, who is managing the planning application for this proposal, and my name is Rory Lawrence. I'm the project manager for the Ballantine Solar Farm proposal. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands which we are gathered on today, the Gunai people. We pay our respect to their elders past, present and emerging. Thank you for having us here again for this month's council meeting. We were given the opportunity to present to council last week, and coming away from that, we felt there were areas we could provide additional clarity, so I will try to make this 5-minute presentation as targeted as possible. Starting with a brief introduction to Elgin, we are a leading international solar and storage company with offices all over the world. We entered the Australian market in 2018 and have a large portfolio of 15 projects across Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. 3 of our projects were recently selected by the federal government for the Capacity Investment Scheme, strongly endorsing Elgin's development portfolio. This proposal involves construction of an 85 megawatt solar farm and a 70 megawatt battery energy storage system with 4 hours storage. This will provide enough solar generation to power 34,000 Victorian homes. The project will create approximately $200 million of investment and 150 jobs at the peak of construction, as well as a community benefit sharing fund. At the end of the project life, the facility will be decommissioned and can be returned to its original agricultural use. We had a thorough consultation program prioritising face-to-face meetings with near neighbours and councillors, and that's why we're here tonight. Given the short time frame this evening, we'll focus on some of the primary concerns raised by the community. As on most storage projects across Australia, one of the major community concerns is fire risk. Despite rapid growth in BESS projects across Australia, there has only been 2 battery project fires back in July 2021 and September 2023. Both these fires were attributed to failures during the commissioning process, and both were contained to 1 or 2 storage units. Since these incidents, there has been significant changes to regulation and safety standards, and each project is carefully assessed by the Country Fire Authority. This proposal has been approved in writing by the CFA, subject to the following conditions. We will prepare, in consultation with the aerodrome and the CFA, an emergency management plan and a fire management plan, so that in the very unlikely scenario where a fire does occur, it is managed and extinguished effectively. In addition to the robust regulation changes, the BESS industry has seen significant advancement in fire prevention technology. For example, if a threshold temperature is reached, the BESS will automatically shut off. Elgin has been in consultation with the CFA throughout the entire planning process and has implemented all recommendations into the site plan so that the proposal meets the highest possible safety standards. Part of that will be bunding around the BESS so that any water that is used in it for a possible fire will be caught and will not affect any catchments. We ask that, as recommended in the Council Officer's report, the Council relies on the CFA as the subject matter expert in assessing the proposal's fire risk. Secondly, we understand the community is concerned with the proposal's potential impact on the operations of the aerodrome. Elgin has been in consultation with the aerodrome's coordinator since early 2023 to ensure the proposal is mitigating any potential impact to its airport operations. Additionally, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority has reviewed the planning application and has no objection to the proposal, subject to recommendations from the glint and glare assessment. This assessment found that the level of glare to aircrafts was acceptable and recommended that the resting angle remain between 30 and 55 degrees, which can easily be adhered to. Insurance is another concern which has been raised on renewable energy projects across the country, and Elgin is having regular conversations with the relevant authorities to properly address the concern. The Insurance Council of Australia has publicly stated that it is not aware of any instances where insurance premiums for neighbouring properties have increased as a result of nearby renewable energy development. Like all insurance, farm insurance premiums have risen in recent years due to the increased number of natural disasters and escalating costs associated with recovery and rebuilding. If this was to change, excuse me, Elgin will investigate this, and it is likely there will be an industry-wide response. Finally, we understand the community is concerned about the loss of prime agricultural land. This site was specifically chosen as it is considered lower-grade agricultural land due to its lack of versatility. Furthermore, the proposal intends for sheep grazing to continue on site throughout the life of the project. Although agri-solar projects can reduce grazing capacity, they've been associated with high-quality wool production. And at the end of the project life, the project will be decommissioned and returned to its agricultural use. We are very confident with this planning application. It will create local jobs, energy resilience, and it will create a benefit sharing fund for the Bairnsdale community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Eastman, question of clarification.
Three, sorry. The first one, the capacity investment scheme, if you can explain that a bit. You mentioned that, and you were selected by the Australian government. Just explain what that is and what it means.
Yeah.
The second, I'll just go through the three of them. The second one, the letter from the Insurance Council, is it possible for council to see a copy of that sort of says, it'd be good to see the question and the response so that we've got that to refer to. And the other one, will you be relying on the local CFA brigades if a fire does come up, or is it like the plantations where they have their own brigades? Or HVP has their own brigades. So I'm just wondering, are you relying on local CFA brigades, or do you have your own?
Yeah, thank you for your questions. For the first question, so the capacity investment scheme was an initiative brought on by the federal government to fast-track renewable development, and what they will be doing is effectively buying the energy produced from specifically chosen renewable energy projects and helping fund that and making it more bankable and inviting investment. So for the first tender, there was up to 100 entries and 19 projects were chosen. And all three of Elgin's entrants, which was 3, were chosen by the federal government. The second question, so the Insurance Council of Australia, they did a publication mid last year, so that's public and we can share that with you. And for the third question, so Callum might be best to speak to the fire management plan and emergency management plan.
Yeah, sure, that's a great question.
Sorry, just further clarification. The companies that didn't get chosen by the capacity investment scheme, do those still continue with their projects?
Yeah, so it's basically just an off-take agreement, which means they're just purchasing the energy through a contract.
Just trying. Would you have gone ahead if you didn't get chosen?
So to make a project more bankable and to be financed by a bank, it is preferred that they have contracts in place to basically guarantee revenue. So if we weren't successful with the capacity investment scheme, we would try to obtain a corporate power purchase agreement by some other means. So we like to deal with large companies who want to offset their carbon use, such as Amazon, Microsoft, and they purchase that agreement through that agreement to offset their carbon use.
Thank you.
Thank you for those answers. Now, Councillor Travascus. Sorry.
Sorry, I believe that third question was whether there'd be reliance on local CFA volunteers to fight fires. So that arrangement hasn't been negotiated yet. It's really all part of that emergency management plan that is prepared in coordination with the CFA. So that'll be all about resources, access, emergency response, which is a post-approval piece.
Thank you.
No worries.
Okay. I think you said that if there's if the system gets too hot, it will automatically switch off. I assume that's going to be at a fairly high input time, so it'll be running probably at its 80 kilowatt or whatever it is, the maximum power. What effect will that have, the sudden switch off, on the wider grid?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the grid, the BESS project will provide resilience for that network. It won't at any time rely completely on that network. It's not like a coal plant where it's all centralised. The idea of this renewable energy build out is that it's decentralised and there's projects operating all around the network so that we're not just relying on that central piece. If there was, with a coal station, if there was one of the lines failed, then that would create a disaster for the entire area. But because a renewable project is, there's multiple around, and there's also a battery project that's been approved across the road from the Bairnsdale switching station, it's creating a more resilient network so that these failures, if the BESS was to turn off, that it wouldn't impact the wider community.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, look, thanks so much for your responses. I have a few questions. So firstly, my first question is in regards to this project. Is it subsidised by the government?
There's no subsidy in place at the moment. A form of subsidy would be that capacity investment scheme, but a project needs to be approved before you can apply for that capacity investment scheme.
Okay. You mentioned, I have a clarification question on, you said that you would catch the water if there was a need for that, for a fire to be put out. So, and also it's been raised that there wouldn't be enough water to put it out. So could you answer those two questions for me, please?
Do you want to speak on the bunding?
Yeah, sure thing. Generally as part of that emergency management plan, there is detailed engineering drawings submitted to the CFA for consultation on. There's also a separate report that's built around how that detention will work. So effectively, bunding will be, built into the base or the slab, and that'll capture any sort of hazardous material that comes through putting out a fire or even potential other emergencies, which is all a part of that management system. And sorry, the second part of your question was around water.
Yeah, where we get the water from.
So again, it's also a management practice. So at this stage, we've got a conditioned literage, so volume, that's specified on the plan and designated by the CFA in accordance with the guidelines. But There will also be consideration of where that water comes from in the management plan, and it'll be discussed with the CFA at the time. So they are valid questions. They're just sort of part of that management process and that assessment pathway.
Okay, and my final question's around, you mentioned the concerns about the airport. It's very close to the airport, and that you'd been in deliberations with the coordinator at the airport. So this is a two-part question. I have supplementary. So the first one is the coordinator a pilot?
I'm not aware of whether the coordinator is a pilot, sorry.
Right, which is a crucial element to some of the concerns that I have around something that wasn't mentioned about thermal plume and microclimate alteration risks. So we're aware that large-scale solar arrays can significantly increase ground level temperatures. And it was mentioned a little bit earlier about, the heat island effect. And my concerns, I suppose, is once those surface temperatures around the solar panels increase, especially being, very familiar with flying light aircraft, that can potentially affect low altitude flight and patterns during hot still days, which is particularly critical for light aircraft operators of smaller unmonitored airports. So how can we have any, comfort knowing that that's potentially going to cause effect for aviators?
Yeah, I'm not an aviation engineer myself, but the Civil Aviation Safety Authority is there and they've reviewed our application, and it's really they're the subject matter experts. So it's really on them to recommend whether this project is safe or unsafe.
Yeah, I've read it. I'm not comforted at all, but thank you.
And Callum might add to that.
I might add to that. It isn't necessarily an assessment criterion as part of the aviation guidelines for that uplift from heat island effect. There are known solar farms that are appended to a lot of airports currently, and main concern is around glint and glare, and that's been assessed. However, look, if it's forming part of an assessment for that guideline, I think it would certainly be a warranted assessment.
Thank you.
Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mayor. A general question first, and I understand if you don't know the answer. I'm wondering, we talk about the capacity of the grid. If your proposal is approved, do you know what the remaining capacity will be? Where I'm going is, how many solar farms can our grid handle, and are we approaching peak solar farm, or have we got lots more potentially in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we originally targeted Bairnsdale because it was a strong part of the grid and there was capacity. We understand that there are other solar farms that are being proposed, and we are currently doing tests with Omeo and AusNet to make sure that there's enough capacity for our project and it's not going to cause congestion in the line. So we are confident that when we get a grid approval, there will be enough capacity in that line to allow for our project. Do I believe other projects are going to be developed after ours? It's difficult to say, but I would say probably not. I think there's only room for one, maybe two.
Okay, thank you. My next question's a little bit more technical in nature. I used to work in an oil refinery. We bunded area tank farms. You made reference to water containment systems being on a slab. I had assumed it would be a downstream dam type containment. Can you just clarify for me the nature of that containment and whether it is actually like a bund we would see at a tank farm, for example?
Yeah, so that's an example. It's an example system. So obviously it's a detailed civil engineering decision during that emergency management process. So I'd like to say that most battery systems are quite unique to the site, and the type of infrastructure that's utilised to address can vary. So that was an example of what is standard approach or standard practice around bunding being incorporated in emergency management plans. But it's potentially possible that another system might be utilised if it's more effective.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see no more questions of clarification, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I would ask Mr Stevenson to please come forward and present the officer's report.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. First, I'd just like to acknowledge everyone that's presented and the points that they've put across tonight. Also, if we can answer any other points of clarification after this, happy to do so.
Please continue. Sorry, Mr Renback, you probably need to be...
on the solar farm as well. Was that not in your agenda?
No. Check with governance.
We'll just check that with governance. We had you down as asking the question, which you asked. We didn't have you down to make a submission as well.
Okay, thank you, and apologies for any confusion that may have come from that presentation. So please continue.
So do you want to you could let him if you would like to?
I'd be happy to. Mayor, if I may, I'd be happy to support a change of normal governance process and allow the Speaker to submit a further, as long as that's okay with you, Mayor. And
Yeah, for the confusion, I would actually say yes if you wish to actually give a submission now as an add-on to your question earlier. That's you would get 5 minutes, right. Mr Renback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I was going to touch on just a couple of issues around the solar farm and the implications that occur in regards to insurance, finance. With insurance, I also contacted the Insurance Council of Australia, and they have no impact and no bearing on what happens in the insurance companies. They're purely a governance board. The insurance companies are guided by reinsurers who are all offshore. So if we need more public liability insurance for our farming needs, if we live next door to a power plant and that investment's going to be $200 million, we need to have a similar public liability figure on our farm property, because if we are cutting hay and we start a fire that goes into that property and burns it down, that company, Elgin, or whoever will run it at the time, can sue us for starting that fire. So we need up to $200 million, probably more. At the moment, most of the insurers will only give us 20 million. There's only one insurer in Australia that will give us 50 million. So there's a massive, massive problem there. The banking side of it, this comes from my personal experience in my professional career, 15 years in banking, 16 years owning a brokerage, insurance brokerage in the town, and 10 years in finance. So the banking side of it, the solar farm goes up, the properties nearby, the close ones, will probably be devalued up to 40%. So if those property owners have mortgages, they have a problem with their bank, because the mortgages will have to be renegotiated, the finance will have to be renegotiated, because the security value for those properties has significantly dropped. So if you've got $1 million property and they've lent you $600,000, all of a sudden you've got a $600,000 property and a $600,000 debt, the bank will come to you and say, you need to either refinance your, supply more security or reduce your debt. You've got to find a buyer. And out there on Bengworden Road at the moment, there's 4 properties for sale. So we've got a problem if this goes ahead. I'll just quickly touch on a few things. Livestock production accreditation is going to be another issue, because if we do get that fire, and the bunning is not concrete, that it is a gravel bunning. The seepage from the pollution from the battery fire will seep through those creeks and those waterways into our properties, and the cattle that we produce or the sheep that we produce that go into the food chain will be excluded. We won't have a product to sell. So just something that relates to me at home. I live north of the airport. We've got a 50-metre drain that runs from the airport into our place, and it's drainage off the runways. That particular pipe is about 80 years old. It's collapsed. It was an old asbestos pipe. So the Shire is replacing that pipe. It's as part of their infrastructure. They have to get an environmental impact study done to put a 50-metre pipe back in. And that's fine. But this company is putting a $200 million power plant in line with a runway, and they don't have to do one. I can't see the logic. As a group of people here and the council itself, this is a legacy issue. We need to push back hard against this bloody state government and get a negative response on this. It can't happen where it is. It can't go near the airport. Ambulance Victoria, RFDS, DECA. We remember 2020. How many army personnel were based at the airport? Hundreds. And they got East Gippsland open again. So we need the airport. Can't happen. Thank you.
As before, councillors, anyone got a question on clarification of Mr Redenbach's presentation?
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Opportunity.
Mr Stevenson, take two, please.
Thank you, and once again, just to acknowledge all the submissions tonight. And if we can answer some of the questions, I've got Martin Richardson here with me as well, Manager of Planning, especially around the EES. I'm happy to try and provide some clarity there if we can. But thank you, Mayor, and through you. Before you is a report seeking council endorsement for a submission to the Minister for Planning relating to a planning application for the use and development of land for a renewable energy facility and utility installation, known as the solar farm and battery energy storage system at 280 Bengworden Road, Bairnsdale. Some key points for consideration are, one, the Minister for Planning is responsible for decision-making for all renewable energy facilities of 1 megawatt capacity or greater. This includes undertaking the notice requirements of the Planning Environment Act 1987, receiving submissions and assessing them. At its meeting of the 20th of May 2025, Council endorsed a position paper, Renewable Energy Planning Applications, to provide broad guidance on referrals for renewable energy facilities. In accordance with the position paper, the submission requests that the Minister for Planning undertakes a robust assessment of key issues as part of the planning application assessment process. The draft submission focuses on a number of things. A full consideration of the obligations of the responsible authority, that being the Minister, in accordance with the policy requirements of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and the East Gippsland Planning Scheme. B, ensuring any localised environmental or amenity impacts are avoided, minimised and/or mitigated. Needs consideration of local community objections and concerns regarding any real or perceived impacts of the proposal. Delivering appropriate and ongoing community engagement and securing local economic and community benefits associated with the project. Officers have not undertaken a detailed assessment of the impacts of the proposal, however have identified key issues that are considered critical to that assessment and conditions that should be applied to any permit, if approved, to ensure that any potential impacts can be avoided, minimised and or mitigated. Thank you, Mayor. This is presented for your consideration.
Thank you for that. Now, councillors, any questions of officers? Councillor Eastman,
sorry,
you go first.
Mr Stevenson, you said you'd provide clarification about the EES. Can you do so?
I'll let Mr Richardson do it because he's got it in front of him. Thanks.
Thank you.
I had it in front of me. Just bear with me a moment, please. So environmental effects statements are regulated by the state government's legislation, the Environment Effects Statement Act. And in relation to referrals of EESs, this information is publicly available on the Minister's website. Where a new or amended project could reasonably be expected to have the potential for a significant effect on the environment, the proponent or a decision maker needs to ask the Minister whether an assessment is required. So there are two pathways for referral of to the Minister requesting an EES. One is the proponent does it. The second one is a decision maker. That is a statutory authority which has a statutory role in making a decision on that project, may refer it to the Minister and request an EES. Council does not have that role in this application. That doesn't mean the Council can't ask the Minister for an EES, but the pathway is not defined by legislation.
Councillor Crook, are you okay? You've withdrawn. Councillor Buckley.
Just further clarification, in the submission, our submission as it is in the introduction, it states that that it will be based on environmental sustainability strategy. We haven't directly asked for an ES for an EES, have we, in our submission?
No, the submission as it stands does not request the Minister to require an environment effect statement.
Thank you. That's all.
Councillors, do we have any other questions? I see none. So do I have a mover for this motion? Oh, Councillor Buckley.
Mayor, I'd like to put my microphone on. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternate motion. Yep.
Okay.
Can I please request? Will you need a seconder? Or do I read it first?
Read it? Read it first.
Shall read it first. The Council, 1, endorses the submission to the Minister for Planning in relation to the planning application for use and development of land for a renewable energy facility and utility installation solar farm battery energy storage system at 280 Bengworden Road, Bairnsdale application. Reference PA 2503624 as circulated to councils on the 10th of June 2025 by Councillor Eastman. Authorises the Chief Executive Officer or delegate to lodge the submission on behalf of Council and notes that Council endorsed submission will be included as an attachment in the minutes of this meeting. May I just seek clarification on a governance issue? If we were to make an amendment, or if someone was to put forward an amendment to this motion, such as an addition to request the Minister to require an EES statement, can you explain those steps, please, CEO?
Sure, and through you, Mayor. As you're moving the motion, Councillor, you can move an additional point, perhaps, that says, and requests that the Minister also consider seeking an environmental effects statement for this project.
I'd like to proceed to do that as a fourth point, please.
Okay, that'll be item 4.
Yep.
Could we?
Yes, we're just going to pause for a moment so that
you can populate
the
that.
officers can populate that, and you can see it on the screen. So this is where, for those that are watching online, we play nice music.
Yeah.
Where's your guitar?
Yeah.
those members in the gallery and those people watching online, we do apologise for this short delay, but we now have note 4, which I'll ask Councillor Buckley to read out.
So, if I may, Mayor, through you, we've popped it in as a new point 2 because that's where it
Yes.
logically kind of fits.
So, point 2 reads, requests that the Minister for Planning as the decision maker on this application requires an environmental effects statement. Yes?
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. So,
I've read the rest.
so
before.
we've read all that. That's all read, and therefore you
Take those
to read. So, councillors, we need to get a seconder for this motion. So, good, Councillor Eastman. Thank you. So, Councillor Buckley, you wish to speak to this?
I do. Mayor, councillors, proponents and members of the community, thank you for being here this evening. As you know, we must make a submission to the state government. However, 2 words, councillors, wrong location. As councillors, we deeply care about our community and the future of our region. While I support renewable energy in the right conditions, I find it difficult to support the Ballantine Solar Farm proposal in its current form because it fails, in my view, to respect the safety, voices and values of our local people. We've read the reports, we've listened to many people who will be affected, and as a farmer, the importance of farming land should take precedence for food security. Toxic fumes from potential battery fires and sheep and cattle don't mix. The issues around insurance premiums for neighbouring properties is untenable, and the devaluation of land is quite frankly unfair. As we are all aware, this proposal is being considered at a state level, so as a council we have formulated a submission to engage the state to have a deeper level of understanding, and I thank the officers and for all the councillors for their work, which has been substantial in that contribution. The community has been disadvantaged, in my view, with the removal of the VCAT appeal process. And so those who live beside the project, rely on nearby farmland or use our local airport have no legal path to raise concerns or request changes. I believe that is not fair. When something of this scale impacts a community so directly, we deserve to have a say. There are real safety issues here. The site is on a slope leading into Ballantine Creek and the Gippsland Lakes. If there's a fire, especially involving large battery storage systems, I think it would be nearly impossible for local fire crews to contain it with the limited water. And I thank the proponents for giving us comfort that they would have, facilities to capture the water. But however, I'm not an engineer, and I can't say whether that would be right or not. We know that if it were to happen, that these sorts of fires can burn for days, release toxic smoke, and would place a strain on even the best equipped emergency services. Now, being the daughter of a famous aviator, I reached out to several pilots re the location and impacts to the airport. This solar farm is less than 1 kilometre away from the runway used by emergency flights, the air ambulance and firefighting aircraft. Even a moment of glare or heat distortion could make a dangerous situation worse, especially for light aircraft. Pilots who rely on visual cues, not air traffic control, and the margin for error is small, and I'm not comforted by CASA's report. I'm not comforted that pilots of our region have not been included in the community consultation, and I feel local knowledge has not been fully considered, and that is why we have made specific provision in our submission to address that matter. I'm not against solar energy in principle. It is part of our future, as is thermal coal and gas. However, let's be clear, I'm for common sense, and a project like this should be in a location that's safer and one that doesn't compromise public safety. In conclusion, firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Eastman for working late into the night and taking into consideration some of my concerns as well as capturing many of the community concerns. So well done, Joe. I also believe that although there are benefits for renewable industries, who benefits the most when they are subsidised and profit perhaps goes offshore? So I ask the Minister to pause, to reconsider and to truly listen to this community before making a decision that cannot be undone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
Tried to
Buckley.
speed that up.
Councillor Eastman, would you like to speak to the motion? Microphone, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We've worked on the officer's submission, which in itself was quite good, but as a councillor group we felt that we needed to show more support for the community in what we were trying to achieve. One of the difficulties we've found with this particular issue, and there'll be others that come up, have been the changes in legislation in the Planning and Environment Act that have effectively taken away the rights of our communities to have an input in what happens where they live in our own regions. So there's a couple of sections of the different acts in VC 242 and Section 73 of the Planning and Environment Act have effectively taken away council's right to make decisions on these issues. And in doing so, particularly Section 53.22 has taken away the community's rights to object to VCAT. It's an interesting state that we're in. What it means is that as a councillor group, we don't have the right to, as a council, we don't have the right to make these decisions. They're made by the minister, and unless we find out early about them, we don't even know what's happening. I had no idea until last Tuesday what was happening to the people in Bengworden, because we're busy with so many other things. That's one of the things that disturbs me most of all. What we're trying to do with this amended submission is to try to give communities a bit more of a voice, because in our opinion as a councillor group, if you've lost your voice that you had the right to when council was in charge of things, then we have to act on your behalf, and we have to do it as loudly and strongly as we can, but still be as polite as we can possibly be when we do it. So we're hoping that we've made enough changes. We won't have captured everything, but we've captured some things, including consulting with the local CFA, consulting pilots, including DSE ones about thermal updrafts and whatever. We hope that with these changes, whatever decision is made, they have a much better understanding of local knowledge and lived experience, and there's an outcome that people can live with generally. So, yeah, thank you.
Councillors, does anyone oppose this motion? I see nobody. Would anyone else wish to speak to the motion? So, Councillor Ashworth? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I'm speaking in support of the endorsed submission and everything that's on the screen. While the final decision on this project rests with the Victorian State Government Minister for Planning, not with this council, it's our responsibility as the elected representatives of East Gippsland to advocate for our community and to ensure any development of this scale delivers real and lasting benefits for our region. This submission outlines a strong and balanced position. It does not simply offer support for the project, it sets out a framework of expectations and conditions that place the needs of our community, environment and economy at the centre of the conversation. Councillors have asked for this submission to be more detailed and robust, and as such the submission now calls for the development of a worker accommodation plan to ensure that a temporary workforce required for construction does not put additional pressure on local housing. We are all aware of the current strain on housing availability and affordability. This is a proactive and essential safeguard. The submission strongly advocates for local economy benefit. It calls for clear commitments to local employment and procurement across the construction, maintenance and decommission phases of the project. East Gippsland businesses and workers must have priority access to the opportunities this project creates. The benefits must not bypass our region. The submission includes provision for those living closest to the proposed site. It acknowledges that adjoining landowners may face unintended consequences, as such, increasing insurance premiums. It calls for the establishment of neighbour agreements to indemnify or reimburse affected residents. This is about fairness and ensuring that those most impacted are not left worse off. The submission mandates a community engagement strategy with particular attention to ongoing dialogue throughout the life of the project, including engagement with community and traditional owner groups. This is in line with best practice and reflects our commitment to transparency, respect and inclusive decision making. Importantly, the submission also addresses the long-term future of the site. It requires a comprehensive decommissioning plan that ensures the responsible recycling or disposing of material and reinstating of agricultural land and environmental enhancements to the area. This ensures the legacy of the project is not environmental degradation but sustainable restoration. The submission also calls for an establishment of a community benefit sharing program to ensure the broader East Gippsland community shares in the long-term benefits of the project. The benefits must be meaningful, well-governed and leave a positive legacy. All of these expectations are to be secured through a Section 173 legal agreement. This is crucial. It ensures that the commitments made by the project proponent are enforceable and cannot be changed without approval. It gives our community the security it deserves. I believe the submission reflects a well-reasoned and community-first approach. It acknowledges the potential benefit, but it places the highest priority on protecting our community, supporting our economy and securing long-term outcomes. The option of not lodging a submission would mean missing the opportunity to influence the project in any meaningful way and would effectively silence the voice of our community at this critical stage. And these are the reasons I'm endorsing the submission. And thanks to Councillor Eastman. And yeah, before it gets to the Minister. Thank you.
And that's it.
Thank you. Did I go on to...
Just a little bit over. Councillor Davis, you've got your light on, so you wish to speak for...
Thanks, and through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Eastman and Councillor Buckley and Councillor Ashworth. You're all a very hard act to follow. But I'd just like to say to those that are affected by this project and those of you in the gallery, we have heard you as a council group. We have heard your concerns. It is just unfortunate what's happened, and you know, with I guess with everyone's right to apply to VCAT be taken away on this, I don't think that is fair at all, and I think it's just unfair. You know, that us as a council, we don't have much influence either. I just hope that you know that we've doing what we've done tonight, that we've done just about all we can, and yeah, thank you very much for coming in and making your concerns heard. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. So no more people wishing to speak. Yes, Councillor Brook.
Oh yeah, why not? We don't want to give up an opportunity.
Yes, why not?
I guess first, just a point of clarification, we don't have to make a submission. We're choosing to, because we're not the determining authority. We could just say nothing and let the minister make their decision, but we're choosing to. And we're choosing to for, I guess, a couple of important reasons. Firstly, it's because we recognise that our community have a right to have a say on things that impact their lives. And we recognise that sometimes government processes don't do a really good job at listening to people. You know, our council experiences those same frustrations with other levels of government. I think that's fair to say, and we've all experienced it at one point in time. You in the gallery here, possibly more recently. So we recognise that it's important that our community's concerns are heard, and so as we've heard, our submission seeks to highlight those concerns and asks the Minister to use her powers of inquiry to evaluate them against whatever criteria it is that they use and to take them into consideration in the decision, which is essentially theirs to make. I guess the other part of our reason in making a submission is because thankfully as we've heard from a majority, if not all presenters tonight, we recognise the need for renewable energy. We recognise that this is we've heard that this is a technological wave rolling around the world, and it's come to our town, and there are opportunities in it as well. And it's a technological wave rolling around the world because we need to do something about a changing climate and extreme weather, and renewable energy is a part of the solution to that. That I think we've heard tonight, we all agree on. The challenge is where these renewable generation assets get located. And it's probably fair to say that no one really wants to live next to them, much like people probably don't want to live next to the ageing coal assets, which I will say aren't a part of our future. In fact, they'll all be gone in 25 years in Victoria. Most of them will be gone by 2035, and that's not because that's not a decision driven by climate activists. That's a decision driven by the fact that they're ageing assets that are unsafe. So our council is happy to make this submission on behalf of the community because we know renewable energy is important and we know that your concerns are an important part of our work. So I'm happy to support the motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So if there's no more councillors wishing to speak to this item, sorry. Just a point to note. I'm sure I know what to do next. So, all those in favour, raise your hands. Thank you, councillors. This is passed unanimously. Can we have a brief recess? No. We'll go now. Thank you, Mr. Richardson and Mr. Stevenson. Thank you very much. Just pause for a moment, councillors, because many people are leaving the gallery, so we'll just pause for a moment. You don't have to go, it's just that everybody else has left, so... So, councillors, we're moving to item 5.2.1, which is a road maintenance service contract, and thank you, Ms Johnson. She did express a conflict of interest earlier, so she is now leaving for this item. And
thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Our little pause hasn't been quite enough for Councillor Buckley. She has not returned, but I think we could start speaking, Mr McConnell, to
thank you.
This contract.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you and for councillors is a report recommending that council take advantage of the option to extend existing contracts for road maintenance. So contract 2019-1293 is a lump sum and schedule rates contract covering the 4 areas across the Shire for road maintenance and provides for appropriately qualified contractors to undertake that work. Back in 2019, the contract was awarded to Cranes Asphalting and Bitumen Sealing and Whelans Group Investments for the different areas within the Shire. That contract was for 5 years, and that expiry of that is on the 31st of July this year. The contract also provides for 2 terms of 24 months each of extension that are available to council. And so the recommendation is that council take up the first of those and also recommends that councillors also delegate the second extension period to the CEO, subject to satisfactory performance. And I would say, whilst there's a number of matters within the administration of the contract where there's been some minor adjustments and improvements over the last 5 years, on the whole, the performance of the contractors has been appropriate, and that's why we're recommending the option to extend. And you've previously been briefed in relation to that, the compliance with our Road Management Act, Road Management Plan, intervention levels, and the reduction in liability to council over that time. So before you is the recommendation for extension of this contract. I have with me Paul Rooney, our Manager of Infrastructure and Open Space, to assist with any questions if you have any. Thanks, councillors.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. So do we have any questions of Mr Rooney or Mr McConnell? Yes, Councillor Crook.
I'm taking it from the recommendation that the existing contractors have done a reasonable job and that we're happy to see them continue.
Yes, so I would say that trend over the last 4 or 5 years has seen a reduction in out of intervention defects, which puts us, as I did mention in the brief, was above 96%, which is a high standard for any council, I would have thought.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? Yes, Councillor Farquhar.
Is there an increase of CPI on this contract?
Yes. So thanks, Councillor Farquhar, and through you, Mayor. The contract provides for a CPI adjustment each year, and so that would continue. But other than the CPI adjustment, there's not a increase in rates or similar associated with the extension.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, I see none. Would somebody wish to move this motion? Councillor Farquhar? Good, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Crook. So, you wish to speak to this item?
I think, I guess we're going for option 1. Yep. And agree with our 2 staffers here that, yes, the current contractors have done a great job out on their roads, and it'd be good to see them re-employing young people around the town as well. Thank you.
Councillor Crook, you wish to respond?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, Mayor. Look, we all know that roads are fundamentally critical infrastructure for areas like ours, important to the economy, important to people's welfare, for all sorts of reasons. We need good roads. Looks like we've got some good contractors. Happy to support their continuation of delivering those important services to our organisation. Thank you, Mayor.
Good, thank you. Councillors, any other questions of the office? Sorry, any other one wish to speak for or against this recommendation? Okay, I see none. So, councillors, I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour of the contract extension? And thank you. This also is unanimous. Would somebody like to... okay, so we should see Ms Johnson return. Just wait a moment. Okay, this is 5.2.2, which is the addition of roads to Council's Register of Public Roads. So, Mr McConnell, would you please present this item?
Thank you, Mayor, and through your councillors. From time to time, Council receives requests for roads to be added to the road register. The road register is the list of roads that Council maintains for public use. And in doing so, we then are responsible for maintaining those roads in accordance with our road management plan. There's a number of considerations that are set out in the report that are used in assessing any of those requests for inclusion on the road register. Before you is a report and recommendations in relation to 8 roads where council has received a request for their inclusion on the road register, and therefore for council to be responsible for it, their ongoing maintenance, etc. And the recommendation presented identifies 5 of those roads for inclusion on the road register, and identifies 3 where officer's recommendation is at this stage that they're not included on the road register, and the report sets out the reasons for that. So thank you, councillors. Before we use that recommendation, and again, Paul Rennie is here to assist with any questions you may have.
Good. Councillors. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Paul. In regards to the roads that have been requested for addition that are not supported to be added to the road register, can you explain to me the process that request process, I suppose, and how that so the public can understand how they could go through that process to get their road assessed?
Yep, thanks for the question, Councillor, and through you, Chair. So there has to be certain criteria that the road needs to meet to make sure that we give it due consideration to be added to the road register. Some of the reasons that we wouldn't add it to the road register is, one, if there's no primary place of residence on that road. So if it is just a track to the back of somebody's farm, generally we wouldn't take that on the road register because there's an inherent cost with maintaining that road, and then we've got to justify the cost of maintaining that road and what benefit it gives the whole of the community, rather than that cost being just a benefit to one person or one property. Mm-hmm. So that's generally it. Also, the road has to meet what we call the infrastructure design manual to be able to make the width of the road needs to meet a certain standard, to be sure that if we do put it on the road register, that we're not creating a liability for ourselves, that, you know, there's a road that's too small with too many trees beside it, and then it's being used by cars at 100 kilometres an hour, and there's a risk that they could crash, and there'd be a liability that would sit with us. And then probably the most important one that I have mentioned is if there's an inherently high cost with putting that road on the road register, which means we'd have to remove a lot of vegetation, we'd have to remove a lot of native veg and likes that, then we've got to justify that cost again, to residents in terms of the amount of money we're spending and the benefit as a whole to the community, if that makes sense.
It certainly does. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? If I may, I would like to ask one. So a road that's not designated as, a Shire road, but it gives access for somebody, as you say, to the back of their property. If at some stage there was some erosion, a heavy storm, and it gouged a gutter through it and was completely impassable, would council then consider just a minor maintenance to make that road still usable, although not have it on the register?
Thanks, Mayor. It's probably fair to say that we consider them on their merits, but certainly what I would say is council's not obliged to undertake that work. So if it's not on the road register, then strictly it's the responsibility then for those who are using it to maintain it. From time to time, there are examples where we have undertaken such work, but our commitment and our responsibility is to ensure that roads that are on the road register are appropriately maintained.
Thank you.
Mayor,
yes.
Just the section of the aerodrome road that hasn't been selected, is that the section from Comleys Road south to the field and game area?
So Aerodrome Road, it's from, it's probably, I don't know the roads exactly without looking at it, that there's only one section of unconstructed road that runs from the road at the back of the airport and runs through. So that's just a dirt track, and it's never been a constructed roadway. So again, the cost associated with bringing that up to a standard and who it's going to service and who it's going to benefit has to be weighed up against putting that on the road register.
Yeah, just the field and game are probably going to host some pretty big events.
Yep.
Just like to see that road maintained.
So, councillors, I just draw your attention to the attachment which shows maps that shows the areas of each road that are have been considered as part of the assessment, and so the one we were just speaking of is on page 41 of the agenda papers.
Thank you. Councillor Eastman, you've got your microphone on. Were you wishing to ask a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask about Aerodrome Road. I'm looking at the map now, but I'm trying to see it in relation to the airport. With Aerodrome Road, if it's not on the register, does that mean it still gets treated as a gravel road and gets looked after by the Shire?
So again, as thanks, Councillor, and through you, Mayor, so the only roads where we will make a commitment and we are responsible to maintain to a standard are the roads on the road register. Whether it be an unsealed road or a sealed road, there's the different classifications within the road register. So if it's not on the road register, as I said earlier, there might be a case from time to time where we do undertake some work, but we are not responsible for maintaining that road to the standards set out in the road management plan.
Maybe if I could just touch on that a little bit. So under the Road Management Act, if it's on the road register, we've got an obligation to keep it, to maintain it to an intervention standard. If it's not on the road register, it's not considered a road, so we don't have an obligation to maintain it to the same standard as we would a normal road.
And I'm to assume that no one lives down that road, and that's fine.
Generally, that'll be one of the criteria on what we base it on. If there are people living primary places of residence, then yes, that would heavily weigh in favour of us putting it on the road register.
So, thank you. Councillors, I might just outline. So normally when a house is being constructed or a development's occurring, that's the time at which the roads are brought to a standard. And one of the requirements for in many of these locations, or many of those locations, is that there's all-weather access for emergency vehicles, for example, which effectively means a road to a certain standard. So it is some from time to time there'll be a case where someone wants to develop a house, and actually as part of it, what they need to do is to bring the road up to a certain standard. That's part of the costs of development. And once it's brought up to a certain standard, then we can take it on and continue to maintain as part of the road register. As part of the road register, you'll see in the report the reasons for that in relation to Aerodrome Road is that it's not actually currently a constructed roadway. As in many cases, there's a track through the trees, and you see that in many places, Gippsland, but it's hasn't yet been constructed as a proper road, even though there's a road reserve there and a track in place.
Thank you. Good, thank you. So, councillors, if the questions are finished, do we have a mover? Councillor Buckley, a seconder. Councillor Kavassis. Thank you. Councillor Buckley, you wish to speak to this motion?
Thank you very much, officers, and Paul, thank you for explaining that. What I can say is the importance of our quality of life and living in safety around our roads is just one of the biggest things that council can do, and I know it's a lot of work, and I thank the contractors who do the work. And all I can say is, from feedback from the community, ensuring that they put their rippers down and do a proper job of actually making sure those surfaces are drivable and not just pushing a bit of stone into the corrugations is always very welcomed. So I won't take up too much more time other than to say I think you're doing a really good job. I'm proud of our council roads, and I wish the state government would do as good a job as what we're doing, and that the community would understand what's our remit and what's theirs. So well done. Thank you. So I put this to councillors to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Travascus.
Nothing to add to Councillor Buckley's. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone oppose? I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak for the motion? No. Well, I'll put that to the vote also. So all those councillors in favour? Thank you, councillors. That also is passed unanimously. Right, that leads us to 5.3.1, at which stage I would ask Councillor Ashworth and Councillor Davis if they would like to leave the room while this item is debated. And we will call you when we're done. Thank you, Ms Johnson. Would you like to present your item?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report titled The Leasing and Licensing Policy, which seeks your consideration of a revised policy. So the key points for you all to consider is that our existing leasing and licensing policy was adopted in July 2021 and was obviously due for review. The review of the policy was undertaken, which included benchmarking against other Gippsland councils with the view to simplify the policy and make it more principles-based. The draft policy then went out for community consultation, with the results of that community consultation included at attachment 2. The key objectives of the revised policy are to maximise community benefit, promote the sharing of community facilities with like users where possible, ensure agreements are developed and approved through an accountable and transparent allocation process, ensure all agreements are subject to appropriate terms and conditions, maintain consistency for similar uses and occupation types, and simplify the administration of the policy, whilst recovering some costs for providing this service to the community. So I think that's all I wanted to outline. Thank you, Mayor. The report is with you for consideration.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Now, councillors who are left in the room, and I might remind those who may be listening online that we do still are following governance rules and still have a quorum, even though 2 councillors have left. So any questions of Ms Johnson? Councillor Buckley.
Yes, thank you, Ms Johnson. Just for the public who, the couple of people that might be listening, is in regards to the review of this lease policy, will there be financial impost to any of the new lease agreements?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. So the way that these particular leases work is that there is depending on the particular lease type, and there's 4 different lease types that are outlined in the policy. So if it's a community use lease, yes, there is a small administration fee that's charged. The current community agreements that are currently in place will not change. So this will only change when they come up for review, and there's a review process that you go through. The small administration fee is increasing slightly. It hasn't increased since 1970. So it will increase from a figure of $114 a year, or $1 odd a week, to a fee of $440 a year, which again is just covering some cost recovery for that service.
Excuse me, could you repeat
Since
when that was last reviewed? Because I thought I heard you say 1970.
The fee was based on a figure from the 1970s. Yes, ma'am.
That's when I was born. Giving away the game.
Wow.
However, just to finish that one up though, a commercial agreement is based on a valuation from an independent valuer or market rate. So it's tested against the market when we're doing the lease agreement for those particular types of agreements with community or commercial uses.
Thank you. I just hope that provides some comfort for people who receive, that sort of increase, that it's sort of, incrementally over decades, that it's remained the same. So there's, thanks for that clarification.
That's okay.
Any other questions, councillors? I see nobody. So, would somebody like to move motion? Good. Councillor Farquhar. Seconder, please. Councillor Buckley. You wish to speak?
Considering it was 1970 was the last review, I think it's about time it's been updated. So well done, Sarah. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, look, 1970 was a terrific year. No, but seriously, look, I think it's worth mentioning that, you know, how important it is to community for these facilities and for the communities that use them and for the things that happen there. They're the central hubs of places that mean something to people and that create safe spaces. And I just think that that's what makes part of, you know, East Gippsland a beautiful place to live, and they're really important. So, yeah, supports our volunteers, and so I'm happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose the motion? See nobody. Would anyone else like to speak? No? Good. Okay, we'll put this to the vote also. So what's left of us? All those in favour? That's also unanimous. So, Ms Johnson, would you mind asking the other two councillors if they could please return?
I'll ask someone to do that.
Welcome back, councillors. That was a nice gesture. Now, the next one is 5.3.2, our draft internal resolution procedure. Now, you also will present this, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So going to the key points of this particular report for Council to consider. So as part of the legislative reforms that came into effect last year, Council is required to adopt a set of procedures that may be followed by councillors to deal with alleged breaches of the Model Councillor Code of Conduct. Specifically, if we're thinking about the regulations, it's Regulation 12A1 and Schedule 1 of the Local Government Governance and Integrity Regulations prescribe that the procedures must include, what the regulations must include, and Regulation 12A2 provides that the procedures must be adopted by the 1st of July 2025, which is obviously not too far away. So this particular procedure, and remembering it's for internal use, it outlines 3 different processes that may be followed, and these include the direct negotiation between the parties, a conciliation process which is required to be conducted by the Mayor, unless the Mayor is party to the matter, in which the Deputy Mayor may take on this role, and finally, if the matter cannot be resolved through conciliation, a mediation process may to be facilitated by an independent and impartial third party. The internal procedure has been developed in accordance with the Act and regulations, and it supports obviously the effective management of councillor conduct by outlining clear, fair and transparent processes for dealing with any potential breaches of the Model Code of Conduct. Finally, the adoption of the procedure obviously is aimed at strengthening the existing governance framework and respect for working environments for us all. There is, outside of this policy, and it's outlined in the policy, a formal resolution pathway which is also prescribed under the Act. It's obviously a different process but is clearly outlined as part of this procedure as well. Janelle Skipworth, our Manager of Governance and Reg Services, is here if you have any other questions as well. Over to you, Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillors, do you have questions? Yes. Councillor Eastman, please.
Yeah, Sarah, there seems to be an assumption in here that someone becoming a mayor or a deputy mayor will automatically have conciliation skills, and that the councillor group as a whole will understand how to use a conciliation or mediation process. I'm wondering if there's any specific training in relation to this, because I know it takes quite a bit to become a councillor or mentor or anything like that, and just because someone has a name doesn't mean that they've got the skills. So I'm just wondering how we support that.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Eastman, and through you, Mayor. So yeah, it's a really good question. It is something that's incredibly important because these processes are obviously not intuitive to anybody or everyone. So my understanding is that MAV provides training to the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor as part of the training pieces that all councillors have to do. And so there's an extra level of support provided to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, but there's also the mandatory training components that you all have to do as part of the professional development piece, which came in as part of this Act as well.
That's wonderful. I feel like I'm finding it difficult to support this because I see quite a bit of difficulty with it. But I'm just wondering, would there be the opportunity for the whole councillor group to have at least some Conciliation 101 or Mediation 101 training rather than just the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, so at least people then know what process they're going into and what's expected?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Eastman, and again through you, Mayor, and I've just looked at the CEO for a nod here. So yeah, look, that's certainly something that we can investigate, and obviously subject to having the right budget envelope and the timing of that with the mandatory training, other mandatory training that's needed as well across the councillor group. So the answer is yes, we can definitely consider that and see what we can get for the whole councillor group to do some conciliation training.
CEO?
Through you, Mayor, if I could just add to what Ms Johnson's already said, I think we could also offer that if at any time the Mayor or the Deputy Mayor are feeling like they need some additional support before they go into a process, we could organise that as well. So whether that's a little bit of mentoring before they embark on, perhaps if it's the first one, or if they feel that they would like some more support, I'm sure that that's something we could also take on and make sure there was a bit of mentoring. Impartial, third-party mentoring prior to taking on the process. Thank you.
Do you wish to ask a question?
Oh, you're looking at me.
You've just got the light on.
Oh, sorry, I was legacy microphone, Mayor, legacy.
Legacy. Another question?
Sorry, I do. I'm sorry. And my apologies for not having looked into this in more detail. When we did the briefing on this, we talked about what might happen if a complainant came forward and then refused to engage in the conciliation process. I haven't looked into the detail. Have you made any changes to that since to address what happens if a complainant refuses to engage?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Eastman, and through you, Mayor, let me just find the section, which I'm sure Janelle's going to send to me, that we added in, because I can't remember it off the top of my head, but yes, we certainly did do that. So we did, if you look at page 64 of 78, in that bottom paragraph there, has been added. We also included what else did we include? Hold on a second. So we've also included section 7, which is around additional support for councillors, and we've included and strengthened section 8, which is about the formal dispute resolution procedure. Sorry. So I'm now on page 67. And Janelle, please feel free to jump in if there's something else that I haven't mentioned that I should have.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the part where it says if the respondent doesn't wish to continue, then process finishes. I'm looking for the part that says if the complainant doesn't wish to. What was that section in? I'm looking at section 5, terminating a process. If if the parties decide or the respondent says they don't want to be involved anymore, then that's fine, but it doesn't mention the complainant. So where's the one that mentions that if the complainant...
Apologies, Councillor Eastman, and through you, Mayor. Can you just ask me the question again that you're trying to get to the bottom of here? So it's when a...
We had an issue when we had it looked at it first, where a complainant might choose not to engage in conciliation, and there was no next step if that were to be the case. I'm trying to see where that, which section that was fixed in.
Just, in the flowcharts, Councillor Farquhar. So I suppose that's the avenue. If the complainant's not comfortable with how this, because this is, again, it's only to be used for internal and it's only optional if you internally want to resolve a potential dispute in line with the Councillor Code of Conduct. So the regs require us to have an internal resolution procedure.
No, I understand that.
Yep. But it's not, so if the complainant isn't satisfied with the process or the engagement with the process, I suppose the answer is that the complainant would go through to the formal piece.
Sorry, I need to explain it a bit more thoroughly. We have seen some instances with different councils where people have weaponised their positions by making complaints but then have refused to engage further, and it can set up a system whereby natural justice doesn't exist for people who have a complaint against them because someone makes a complaint, doesn't want to engage in any sort of process to resolve the complaint, but the person who's had the complaint made against them is left wondering what they've done and with nowhere to go. So it's basically the whole thing that ensures that natural justice is required to continue, and if a complainant puts a complaint forward, that they have to abide by it and go through a conciliation process. They can't basically do a hit and run, basically. Like, you can't complain about someone without being willing to go into some process to sort that issue out.
Thank you for clarifying, and through you, Chair. From my perspective, because of the fact that they're making the application for conciliation, indicates that they're actually willing to participate in it. Because they're making the application to resolve an internal dispute. So they're actually applying to the Mayor to go through that process. So it would just seem counterintuitive that they would then refuse to participate in that process.
Well, when we looked at this last time, I did ask that question, and I said there didn't seem to be a step if someone didn't want to go through conciliation. So I'm just assuming you've addressed that.
Through you, Mayor, I think that if we look at step 6 on page 69, it says that if the resolution of the dispute is not obtained during mediation, or if mediation doesn't occur, then formal dispute resolution processes contained within the Act can be followed. Now, that could be from the person who made the first complaint, or the person that had the complaint made against them and then felt that they hadn't been given that opportunity to have natural justice. So they could then take that through the formal dispute resolution process.
I would just add to that, and again through you, Chair, that they can also go through those formal dispute resolution processes outlined in the Act at any stage. There is nothing requiring a councillor to engage with the internal resolution procedures. They are procedures that may be followed to resolve disputes. It's not mandated that they're followed.
Thank you.
Anyone else with questions? Good. So would somebody like to move the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Crook. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Farquhar. Thank you. Councillor Crook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, as councillors, I think it's fair to say we get along pretty well. It's also fair to say that in certain circumstances, that's not necessarily the case. And when those circumstances arrive, it's important that we have a process that is well mapped out and clear to everybody that we follow to try and resolve our differences. This is that process, and I have no hesitation in recommending it to the council for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Farquhar, make a comment?
I think that's exactly right, Tom. You've got to have that fair process that everyone is treated justly, whether you're the complainant or the receiver of it. So that's clear to me how we go through it, so thoroughly endorse it. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against motion? Anyone else to speak for it? Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, look, thanks, councillors, and for the discussion and officers. I think it's really important that we understand the importance of having a cohesive group that has good leadership and respectful values around the table. Because when that isn't the case, it can become costly to the ratepayer. And that's why I think this internal process will allow some good principles around the table to be followed if needs be, and hopefully we won't have to use this, but it's there if we need to use it, and it should be used to try and mitigate going into external arbitration processes, because they can be quite costly, not only to the ratepayer's hip pocket, but to the people involved in them, and especially when they are weaponised or unjust. And I would like to think that our good mayor and myself, who have been here for quite some time and have had professional development training over the last period of, well, 5 years for myself and John Moore, that, you know, that we would entrust those skills and depart them well if we need to use them. And hopefully, I don't think we will have to do that, and that's my hope. So I will support the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I see that. There are none, so we'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? Again, unanimous. Thank you. Now, 5.3.3 is transparency of councillor briefing. So I would ask Ms Weigel, would she please introduce this report?
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. This report actually came about from a notice of motion that was moved in the last few days, or the last few meetings of the last council. So it has taken a little while to get this one to you, and there's a range of reasons for that I'll go through in a moment. But the notice of motion called for a report into public transparency, looking specifically at council briefings and the transparency that could be introduced to those briefings. And also the Mornington Peninsula Shire Councillor had already moved a motion around transparency in briefings. So it also called for us to look at and learn from the experience of Mornington Peninsula. So in responding to that notice of motion, we began to work with Mornington Peninsula Shire Council. We also engaged with our neighbouring councils in Gippsland, who are also talking about the same thing. How do we make sure that we're making our decisions in a transparent way, and that transparency is seen and very visible for our communities? So we worked with a group of 4 other councils from across Gippsland to look at what this might mean for us, and really looked at a very broad range of opportunities and options for us. In the middle of this, however, councils were all informed by the state government that the state government was moving to a model policy for transparency, and all councils would be expected to adopt that sometime after July. So therefore, councillors, the report before you does not go as far as to recommend changes to our transparency policy, preferring to wait until such time as we've seen what comes out from the state government, and then we may want to add and enhance that. And indeed, when Latrobe City Council considered this similar aspect at their meeting very recently. They also called for a halt on doing anything until such time as the transparency policy was understood. However, we believe we can go one step further at this stage and introduce some change and continue to introduce other change incrementally. Councillors, therefore, the recommendations before you to consider include summarising a council briefing session discussions and including those in the monthly council meeting agenda so that they're very visible and available to the community. It also calls on Council to note that we're already well down the way in developing a very interactive transparency hub, which will allow our communities to access information around council decisions, the status of council projects, the status of council's budget at any time through what we're calling a transparency hub. And that relies on some upgrades of some of our existing systems. So we're saying that would be implemented by the second half of 2026. It also, the recommendations also note that we should be continuing to look at how we enhance transparency around council business, whether that's the business of council meetings or more broadly, and therefore we will bring future reports back to council on this matter. And finally, it provides a summary around what's happening in Mornington Peninsula. They are yet to fully implement the resolution to open their briefings, and I believe they may have something going to their council shortly. I'm happy to take any questions on this matter and acknowledge the work of the governance team that supported this report, and also acknowledge the collegial way in which the Gippsland councils have worked together to make sure we were sharing our learnings and understandings and we're learning from each other as we went. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Councillors, questions regarding this item?
Sure.
I was waiting.
Councillor
Buckley?
I'll formulate a question on the run. So it was hard not to feel pipped at the post when we found out that the state government were going to implement mandated transparency policy across all councils, and I suppose I'm waiting, perhaps not with a bated breath, but waiting to see what that's going to look like. And I think my question is probably around: do we have any guidance as to when that will be presented to the councillor group? Do we have any sort of parameters, and do we know, or I suppose it's a guess into the wind of what that's going to look like? So when will we receive it?
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. Really great question, and a question we've been asking of local government Victoria regularly as well. We're being told it's likely to land sometime in late July. Recently, local government Victoria also called for nominations for those that wanted to work on a working party to help guide and review the work. So we've nominated our manager of governance to be on that committee or on that working group, knowing that this council is very authentic in wanting to continue to look at transparency and look at how we improve transparency or grow on it. I guess it's not saying that we're not transparent at the moment, but there's always room to improve. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping that we'll hear back very shortly about whether our manager of governance is on that committee, and we're going to be asking questions regularly about where it's up to.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Eastman, yes.
So, CEO, my understanding is that before 2020, all councillors had what they considered Assembly of Councillors report, which is basically the same as putting a summary of the minutes of the briefings into reports. I'm a bit, and I believe after 2020 the government expected councillors to develop their own transparency policies and to do similar, but it seems like most of them become less transparent despite that general guidance. I'm wondering, is there anything that is preventing us doing exactly the same as the Assembly of Councillors reports did beforehand now? Is that being looked at by Mornington Peninsula or yourselves? Or?
Thanks, Councillor, and through you, Mayor, another great question. And it was with some surprise when the Local Government Act was changed that those assemblies of council requirements were taken out of the Act. Up until that time, if there were, I think, 3 or more councils meeting, it had to be reported. So it was a way of not capturing not only what might have happened in briefings, but when councillors were meeting outside of the briefings as well. So we are expecting that will be something that is picked up in the transparency policy. When we bring the transparency policy to council, we can also consider, if it's not there, if there's anything else we'd like to augment it with. So it would be, I would suggest, time once we've received the draft model policy to consider for this council if they believe that goes far enough, or whether they would like to see some additional elements in that, and explore whether we can do that through augmenting the policy around how we engage and when we engage, and some of those things that probably are not really spelt out in the policy as well. So I believe that that's why one of the recommendations here is to continue to bring reports back to this council as we understand more, so that we can continue to build on the good work that this council is already doing around opening up as much decision making as possible, but also looking at how we continue to do that. Hopefully that was a bit roundabout, but hopefully it answered your question.
Thank you. Just I know that some councillors continue to use the Assembly of Councils reports in their meeting minutes through the last 4 or 5 years. I'm wondering if you know if any other councils in Gippsland have actually continued to use them, or did they all discontinue it?
There were none that came immediately. Thank you for your question, through you, Mayor. There were none that came immediately out. We asked for a long list, and we've all got that of what we're all doing in terms of transparency and how we're dealing with it. None of the councils said that they were still using those assembly records. However, some may have built them into their transparency policy, which they're still working, as we are, on our the policy that was adopted by the last council. Council will need to adopt a new transparency policy, so that would be a great time for us to look at what else is happening out there that we can draw from and learn from. It's a great thing about the sector, there's a lot of sharing of information across the sector like this.
Thank you. Councillor Ashworth.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. CEO, could you give us an indication as councillors, but also for the community, as to when the transparency portal or hub might be made available?
Transparency, thank you, and again through you, Mayor, I'm out of practice. The Transparency Hub, one of the really key elements of that is being able to provide sort of really up-to-date financial information to our communities. So it is reliant on the process which has been approved by Council to update our financial systems, so it gives us that ability to really interrogate them and allow the public to interrogate them through a portal on our website. To be safe, we're saying the second half of 2026. Of course, we also always strive to do things as quickly as we can, but that's where we're very confident that we will make later in 2026. The only thing that's stopping us right now is the building of the new financial model. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Is that the last of the questions? So I'm now looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Buckley, you did this last time. Yes. Have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Eastman. So you may wish to speak.
I certainly do. Look, it's been a journey, hasn't it? Thank you, Mayor. I made a promise to community when elected that I would work hard on transparency for our organisation, because we can be leaders in this space. Years ago there was a newspaper article that made the declaration we were the most secretive council in the state, and this was, back in my old man's day, and I just was horrified to see that kind of reporting. And I think we've come a long way since then, because we've all had the right attitude and the will and the desire. So I don't believe that in regards to this, I think transparency is not a destination, it's a journey. And tonight's report, it offers significant steps forward in that journey. So I think that openness and accountability and trust are the bedrock of good governance. The work outlined here, particularly the release of summaries from Councillor Briefing sessions, is a positive move that strengthens the bridge between council and community. It will give residents greater insight into the topics we're exploring and direction we're considering, while still preserving the confidential nature of sensitive matters as the law requires. And it's worth mentioning that in the past, the councils have had, briefings open to the public, but we're in the unique situation now that we could be able to do just that in an online forum, so that people can listen in if they feel like they want to understand. And importantly, I guess this report makes it clear that council briefings are not a decision-making forum. They are spaces for ideas to be tested and for complex issues to be better understood. The function must be preserved, and that function must be preserved. But that does not mean that the community should be left in the dark, and I commend the inclusion of briefing note summaries in our public agenda as a practical step forward. So yes, drawing attention to the forthcoming transparency portal, I'm pretty excited about that. And I believe that it's a great place for more place-based community engagement. So these tools will make information not just available, but accessible, and that's critical because, navigating portals aren't easy, so I think that we need to make that process easier, even for councillors. So I want to stress that this isn't the end, it's the beginning of an ongoing commitment to transparency and democratic renewal. We must remain curious, we must remain responsive, and we must be prepared to evolve as expectations and technology change. So let's ensure we keep building a council that listens, informs, and earns the trust of its community every day. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the officers that have worked hard on this. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Eastman, do you wish to have a response? Anyone wish to speak against this? I see nobody. Anyone else wish to speak for? Councillor Travascus.
Thank you, Mayor. I haven't obviously got any previous experience of councils, but what I feel in this, not just this motion, or this message here, but there would appear in my way to be a movement towards transparency. I've only got one little thing that I'd like to sort of add. I think another step we need to do, and that's somehow or other get ears out in the community that want to listen to the things we've got to say. That's probably a harder job than becoming transparent itself. Thank you.
Well spoken.
Yeah. Absolutely. We want community engagement. Well said.
Okay, councillors, we'll put this to the vote also. All those in favour? Again, unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Now, we move to item 6, which is urgent business, and CEO will tell me that we
have no urgent
business. And item 7, the CEO will also tell me that we do not.
We have no confidential business, Mayor.
Okay, now item 8 is the meeting close. Now, I'm probably going to have our governance officer have conniptions, because I'm going to break with procedure here before I close the meeting.
Oh dear.
Just to say, and we have said it, but to say well done through the CEO, well done to the staff for winning the State Award in Emergency Management. Which was so well received and graciously accepted by staff who travelled to Melbourne in order to be given that award. So I'm just saying now, well done. And that brings us to a close at 8:39. Thank you, councillors and officers.
Well done, John. Thank you.